Joining us, Bill Ketzer from ASPCA, and we're happy to have you here to talk about all the services that you have been providing and continue to provide.
Happy to be here.
To protect our animals. And we looked through some of the other programs you have. One of them that has quite a few pieces to it is talking about animal health in general. The Animal Poison Control Center. Something you don't think about, but might be useful to somebody that has an animal in need. Let's talk a little bit about that.
As a friend of mine always says, it's never a problem until it's a problem, and then it's a big problem. Big problem. The Poison Control Center is a great program that has developed over the past several years. It's actually located in Urbana, Illinois. However, it is a national hotline. You simply call the hotline. There's also a website. So you don't always have to wind up, you can literally type in ASPCA Poison Control, and it will take you to a site where it gives you so many resources in terms of, it can put you at ease before you panic and pick up the hotline and say, my dog just ate a whole bottle of prednisone, what am I going to do? Which happened to my dog, that's why I use that example. Before I ever worked for the A, I called the ASPCA hotline, and it will tell you exactly, line by line, what you need to do in order to provide the most appropriate care for your animal. And it is predominantly free. Depending upon the nature of the situation in the call, there could be a small charge incurred, but more often than not, it's a free service, and certainly the website's free as well. It's a fantastic resource, and I encourage everybody to, whenever we do an event, which we will actually do here in Albany on May 14th, I'll have a stack of those magnets, and people just gobble them up. It's a great thing to have in hand.
And how often do you hear about, animals eating or poison control problems?
All the time. All the time.
It seems like something that could be a common thing where an animal might eat something that they're not supposed to eat.
Yeah, it happens. Again, it's accidental ingestion of medications, but not so obvious stuff. Certain animals, certain breeds of certain type, like a dog, for example, is sensitive to certain types of houseplants, while others aren't. And people just don't. You don't think you would have to worry about that type of thing. Most common houseplants are what they are. Yeah. And any animal that I've owned has absolutely no interest in them, but my next door neighbor's dog certainly did. Yeah. And ate some foxglove out in the yard and had a pretty significant problem. So you just never know, and it's very common. I honestly don't have a statistic in mind, but we field thousands and thousands of calls every year.
If someone had a question, they're thinking about buying a house plant, could they call and ask if they have a particular breed of dog?
Yeah, you could find that right on the website.
Okay.
Yeah, it wouldn't even necessitate a phone call, I would imagine. You could literally go right. There's a list. It's an alphabetized list of potentially poisonous items.
And that's a great list to look at. And that website, again, www.aspca.org. Yep. Plenty of other information about the organization. And that seems to be like that would be a very useful list if you have a dog or thinking about getting a dog or a pet.
Oh yeah, we have it right on our fridge.
Excellent. Let's talk about this is another something that's interesting, mobile and stationary clinics.
Oh, sure.
And that's something that could be useful to members of my district and across the state as well.
Oh, absolutely. This started in New York City because we have our Berg Memorial Hospital in New York City on 92nd Street on the east side. It's been there for years and years. We have 5 mobile spay-neuter clinics that goes out into the boroughs and provides spay-neuter services for like a very, very small fee, $5, $10, I think it's like $5 tops. And sometimes we do Operation Pitbull, which we do all pit bulls free on the days that we're out there. But in addition, in terms of like upstate communities, what we do is we have a very robust grants program. And last year alone, we can talk about that a little bit if you'd like. We do last year we did about $17 million in grants into the communities and sheltering and other types of services. And some of that money was spent on building out capacity for local animal shelters and regional animal shelters for mobile spay-neuter capability. Now, that can mean a lot of different things, whether or not you want to be set up for like a full-service mobile spay-neuter unit where you're in that community, the operating table's in the back, and you do that there, or a less costly alternative is that you have pickup service. What you do is you go into the communities, you schedule ahead of time, and you go out into the communities and you take the dogs in, back to the shelter, back to the hospital where you're going to have that done. They get spayed, they get neutered, they recover, and then they come back into the community. So either way, it's a great program. I mean, it really does.
And the fact that it's mobile, that it comes to your community, makes it very convenient.
And a lot of times and it doesn't need to be targeted towards a low-income population, but it certainly does greatly benefit a low-income population, and a lot of them do target that because folks without the means just simply can't get to a vet, or and I mean, let's face it. I mean, the reality is, if you have a female dog and it weighs 80 pounds and it needs to be spayed, that's a couple $100, and a lot of people, an organization like the ASPCA doesn't feel like they should be prevented from having, giving a pet a loving home just because they can't afford to have the animal spayed necessarily. So it's a good program all around.
Exactly, and more information on that, of course, on your website as well.
Indeed. Yeah.
We talk about, people hear about animal shelters all the time. I know that you have a program here, Shelter Research and Development, that looks into that. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Shelter R&D and our Community Initiatives Department, Community Outreach, all of that is dedicated towards basically providing what began, I think, primarily as like an information clearinghouse to help a local animal shelter with soup to nuts, how to increase your live release rate, how to reduce your euthanasia rate, what to do. Is it good to be like a kind of quote unquote no kill? Is that appropriate for your type of shelter situation? Or, how are you set up? Do you have municipal contracts? Are you not a municipal contract organization? What type of materials should your primary enclosures be made of? How should you position those primary enclosures for dogs as opposed to the dogs that you need to separate for? You name it. What's the most appropriate type of setting for dogs that are being held longer term because they're being held as evidence for those dogs? You can't throw them in a locker like you can drugs or weapons or anything like that. They're living, breathing things that need care, but they have to be separate from the other part of the community. How do you set that up? What is your spay-neuter service? What's your spay-neuter service program look like? Is it functioning at full capacity? What can we do to have it function at full capacity? I mean, it's really just, it has really come, it's one of our most popular programs, and it's a national program, and a lot of organizations we've watched literally kind of transform within less than a year after having taken advantage of these types of resources.
And it's sort of developing best practices and making sure we're doing the best that we can to make sure the animals are comfortable and that we have the best shelters possible.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that's great to know that is out there. That goes right along with your pro-learning program that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that is kind of come into its own too over the past several years, because just with the proliferation of technology, pro-learning is available to like the sheltering community nationwide, and we have a extremely capable staff that creates programs that remotely shelters can participate in, just to kind of help, again, as you said, best management practices. Yeah. But these tend to focus on very specific things. For example, this last year in New York, we talked about the New York State Animal Population Control Program, and which is a grants program operated by the state that is targeted towards spaying and neutering services. And but because it was much different than the old program, it was significantly changed in the budget in 2009. And it was underutilized, and we needed to get the message out there to the shelter community in New York State that this was a significantly different program. It was much more flexible, and it was much more accessible, and ProLearning was a great vehicle to do that.
And it sounds like, I mean, there's numerous programs here. We're not going to be able to cover them all, but again, the website is the best resource, www.aspcA.org. And as always, they can call the number to ask a question if they feel they can't find the answer on the website. But there's so many things. I know you mentioned the grants as well. It looked like you had provided last year $17 million in grants, and what do those grants go towards again? That's
nationwide, and those grants go towards anything from we have what has become the $100,000 Rachel Ray Challenge, which is this amazing nationwide program which makes shelters compete against one another to increase their live release rates, reduce their euthanasia rates, and because they're competing for the cash, and sponsored by Rachel Ray. And it has become such a successful program. We've watched, again, these shelters just transform. We've watched shelters empty their kennels for the first time in their histories. So, you know, grants money is targeted to that, but grants money is targeted to, again, mobile spay-neuter units, public-private partnerships. We have set this thing up to be extremely flexible. And not just for companion animals, not just for dogs and cats. We have an equine grants program that provides hay and other types of services for rescue organizations who need that assistance, because large animals, livestock, equine, much larger, much more expensive to take care of.
And that's something that you know, I hear about in the assembly all the time as well, about you know, horses and legislation that surrounds that as well. I want to thank you for being on the show. I know there's a government relations section here that we had talked about earlier, but I want to thank you for being in touch with my office, for being on the show, for sharing with our audience all the great work that the organization is doing, and certainly in the New York State Assembly, we want to do everything we can to protect our animals and our pets. Join us again here on Assembly Update, where we'll talk about more organizations doing great work in our communities, like the ASPCA. Bill, thank you for joining us, and we will have you back again soon on the show.
Very much my pleasure.
Thank you.